Hello and welcome to Euphoria. I'm designing a building for my LEGO city. It will be a modern multi-storey office building that will be used for a research institute. I call this the Ensgrave building. In this video I'm going to make prototype builds of some of the parts of this building to make sure I'm happy with those elements of the design before I move on to the detailed design for this MOC. Making prototype builds will let me check how some of the elements fit together physically, test the strength of some assemblies and see how things look. The building will be quite large and will be 48 studs wide and 5 stories high. It's meant to be a modern kind of construction with a steel frame and glass walls. First, I'm going to check the strength of some parts of the building structure, including the girder structure and the beams that brace the building and support the upper floors. So here I'm making part of the first level of the building on the base plate. I'm prototyping some of the girder structure for the building. In a real building they would be made of steel, but although I'm calling them girders, they're just made out of LEGO bricks. Some of the girders are not vertical and have sloping parts. I particularly want to check whether the sloping girder structure will work okay. These are important as they provide most of the support for the building. The sloping parts are made using these 1x2x3 sloping pieces and some inverse sloping pieces as well. They work pretty well for the structural members of the building, and providing they're interlocked properly, they're reasonably strong. I designed it so that the side walls fit closely to the sloping girder structure. I can do this using the inverse slope bricks. They don't fit directly, but by raising the inverse slopes by one plate, there's a good fit between the inverse slopes of the wall and the slopes of the girders. There is a slight gap, but it's quite small, so visually it looks pretty good. But there's no physical connection between the wall and the girder, because there's no binding of the sloping bricks. They're only joined at the top where there's a tile going across the join. So although the two parts meet at the top, this looks like a pretty weak area of the structural design, and I think I might have to look at this again. Now I'm going to look at the beams that form part of the structure. This is largely an open plan building, so there won't be many internal walls to add strength to the build. Without them, the external walls are not held in position very well. That might be okay for a small build, but for a large multi-storey building, I don't want it moving around, so it's going to need some strength and support. So in the design, I've tied the walls together with these beams to provide structural integrity for the building. Unfortunately, long beams are not available in the dark blue colour that I'm using for the girder structure. So I'm going to use these medium grey Technic beams instead. When I put the beams across between the girders, then it stabilises and strengthens the structure. These beams across the top of each level not only provide stability for the walls, they also support the floor plate for the level above. I also want to prototype the structure of the floor plates. In this design, the whole floor is made in one piece. You may think that's too large and fragile, as it's 48 studs wide, but when I've done it before, in 48 wide MOCs, it seems to be pretty strong, even when it has holes in it, such as this example from my extended brick bank modular building. The floor plates will be made from 2 layers of plates as usual. Larger plates to make the actual floor, and longer plates, generally 2 studs wide, to bind them together and provide strength. Normally in my MOCs I put 1 by something plates around the edge of the floor plate, but in this design I'm using 2 by something plates. The floor plates themselves are not that strong, but when I put the walls and windows on, it all tightens up pretty well, and so it feels like it will be strong enough. So I think the design of these floors will be okay to provide the separable floors of the building, but they will still need the support of the beams underneath to help keep the building structure from sagging. Now I'm going to look at the design of the sloping window panels. One of the main ideas behind this MOC is to provide some interest to the shape of the building and prevent it just being a plain square block by creating some interesting shapes using sloping window panels. So I've been working out ways to make the sloping window panels that I'll need. I've prototyped some sloping window panels using these rocker or hinge pieces. If I use them at the bottom of the window panels, then I can angle the panels to match the slope bricks that I'm using for the sloping girders. They work very well, both for the inward sloping windows and the outward sloping ones. To make this prototype, I've tried to source some of the smaller window frames and glass inserts that I need to make the design. I found them quite difficult to source as they're not a current part in the colour that I want to use. Now this design uses quite a lot of these small frames, so I think it's going to start getting expensive and difficult to obtain all the parts I need. So I either need to change the colours that I'm using or change the design to bring the cost of this MOC down. In a recent video in this series I looked at how I could make the external elevator for this building. This is an elevator or lift that would run up and down the outside of the building. I tried various ideas for making the elevator and eventually decided to make an external track using roller coaster track pieces attached vertically to the back of the building. I made a prototype to check the design of the elevator car and the way it works with the roller coaster track. I did find that the elevator car that I'd designed in studio didn't really run on the tracks properly. I explained that in my video on the design of the elevator, and you can see how I solved the problem in that video. Using roller coaster tracks, I can have a continuous track on the outside of the building to whatever height I want the building to be. To make the floors separable in my modular building, I want the breaks in the track to be at the same point as the breaks between the separable floors of the building. Here I've built the ground floor of the building with the curved panels and the roller coaster tracks attached at the back. So I'm going to try adding this prototype build of the next floor with the next section of track so that I can check that it fits on correctly. I also want to make sure that the track joins up seamlessly across the join between the floors. Then I can get the elevator car and do a quick check that it still runs smoothly across the joins in the tracks. I also built a prototype of a manual winding mechanism, just with a kind of spool or drum built from LEGO and a simple direct manual winder to pull the elevator up the track and let it down again. So now I've built a prototype of the MOC with the track attached. I'm happy that the elevator system fits with the structure and attaches to the building, and I can see that the elevator works across the joins between the different levels of the structure. I did learn some useful lessons from making these prototypes. The first thing is to confirm that the model designed in Studio can be built in real LEGO. That's not really news because I've done it before, but it's reassuring to know that it can be built as designed. I wanted to check whether the sloping girder structure would work okay. These are important as they provide most of the support for the building. I can make inward sloping and outward sloping girders using the 1x2x3 slope bricks, and providing they're interlocked okay, they're strong enough to support the structure. But I'm not sure about the part where the sloping girder meets the sloping wall. It looks okay, but it's not very strong, so I might want to review that in the next stage of the design. Using beams to tie the walls together and provide more strength to the build works well. Unfortunately, I've had to use these medium grey Technic beams instead of the dark blue ones I would have liked. I built a floor plate as well to check the construction. In this design I've made the whole 48 wide floor in one piece. The floor plates themselves are not that strong, but when I build the walls and panels on the floor plate, it all tightens up pretty well, and so it will be strong enough when supported by the beams underneath. I also checked that the sloping window panels work. Both the outward sloping windows and the inward sloping ones do seem to work okay. But the design uses lots of small window frames, and that's going to be expensive. So I might look at improving that part of the design. And I tried building the external elevator system. I did a separate video about the design and prototyping of the elevator car running on roller coaster tracks mounted vertically. After a couple of tweaks, I found that it works okay, so I'll be continuing with this elevator system as part of the design. So I think that's enough prototyping for now. It's been very useful to check out how some of this build will work. Next, I'll be taking the lessons from these prototypes and put them into the next stage of design, which I call the detailed design. So look out for the next video in this series, in which I'll look at the next stage of the design for this MOC. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos about LEGO modular buildings and my LEGO city.